Roughly about 10 years ago, my wife and I and our 6 children moved out to the country and we started creating a homestead. And we lived on two separate homesteads for a period of about 7.5 years. We did everything we could to live more simple and natural lives. Every time we had the opportunity to increase our skill set, we did that. And anytime we had the opportunity to become more self-sufficient, we did that as well. I think for me in my entire life, in terms of any kind of work I've done or schooling I've had, I learned more from that experience than any other. There's things about living on the farm all of us miss. I think all of my family members want to return to a farm or homestead someday, hopefully with a bigger community and a bigger support system. But that is not the subject of this video. I often get asked by people, what was the most important thing you've learned, or what was the thing that shocked you the most or had the biggest effect on you? And I made a whole video about this, and I talk about it extensively in that video. Living on a homestead really woke me up to the fact of how dependent we all are on the modern day system. I had absolutely no idea, and I think most of us, all of us that grew up with all the privileges and entitlements of the modern day culture, we all live like royalty used to live. We live beyond what royalty used to live like. They didn't have the kind of technology, they didn't have the kind of perks, they didn't have all the conveniences that all of us take for granted. But living on a homestead, I began to see what it takes to create the kind of food that we all have basically brought right to our door. Just we go drive down the street to one of these huge supermarkets and it's just teeming with food and all the other conveniences that go with our modern culture. And this was a two-part lesson for me. And the second part was I began to see in a historical narrative, I began to see a pattern that in our collective past, our ancestors, our fathers, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers were slowly coerced or forced off their homesteads, off their farms, off their rural lifestyle. And there was this hidden promise, this false promise, this already broken promise that they were given, that if you give up all of your skills, all your inner qualities, all your inner character qualities, your toughness, your resilience, your ability to withstand pain, you give up all the hard work, you give up all the things that your forefather, grandparents passed down to you, your parents passed down to you. You give up all of this cultural knowledge. This is something that's happened on a global scale. It's even happening now in rural areas all across the world. And people are being told this incredible hurtful lie that if you give up all of your skills, all the things that make you a fully functioning human being, and you trade that off for one specific skill, one specific slave job. You do that job for a limited period of time and we'll give you this money, and with that money you can buy so many things that you never had before, things you never could even dream about. You'll have a lifestyle that is beyond your wildest dreams as you're scraping the ground and planting seeds and hoping that Mother Nature will be kind to you. That you leave all that behind and this system's going to last forever. This system is indestructible. So once you give up these skills, you're going to never need them again. You just come into this system, find a specialized skill, find a niche, and you can make as much money as you need, as much money as you'll work for, as much money as you can create, and this system will always be there for you and for your progeny, for your children and your grandchildren, and for as many generations of human beings as there are, this system will always be. And they, of course, knew that at the time because of the debt-based nature of the system. I've covered this in a variety of other videos, so I'm not going to cover it here. But the debt-based nature of the system was built to collapse. That they were going to get everybody to create a level of technological advancement where they could create robots that would replace their human labor force, their human slaves, and they would be able to upload their consciousness to these mega minds, these mega supercomputers, and this transhumanist movement. I've covered this in a number of videos. But at some point, human beings would become obsolete. So they would leave their farms and stop being the kind of people that could function within a strong, natural human community, and they could all thrive together, working hard but working smart and living off the skills that for generations their ancestors had developed. So we've given all that up, and now we're at a situation where our economic system, our world civilization, is on the verge of collapse. The collapse is coming. I think most of us sense that. And here we are, all helplessly dependent people on a system that is in complete free fall. It's reached the level where it can no longer sustain itself and it is about to collapse. There's also another hidden aspect to the fact that we're all 100% dependent on the system that it's collapsing. And that is that each and every one of us has certain addictions and needs and perks that we have become accustomed to. We have things that we look forward to that help us get us through our days. It could be things like a cup of coffee. It could be something like watching sports over the weekend or being on the internet or driving your car or any of the things that come along with this modern day lifestyle, traveling all over the world by plane. There's lots of things that are good or at least enjoyable in our modern day system. And a lot of those things are addictive. It could be watching TV every night at 8 o'clock, for example. You know, watching TV releases natural opiates within our human system, within our human brain. So everyone who watches TV gets a slight opiate fix. That's why you'll return every night for that opiate fix when you get into this TV addiction and these sorts of things. So with all of our modern technology, and you know, kids are spending 7.5 hours a day now growing up in an alternative reality. There's so much of this. We've become more and more dependent with each passing generation. And then say nothing of pornography and these other sort of pleasure-centered activities, all of this sensory-based stimulation. So we have all of these sensory-generated activities. We've become these consumers. And because of the economy being the way it is and it having to grow all the time to catch up with the debt, we have this, we've become accustomed to these pleasure-based lives, and many of us feel entitled to these types of lives and basically need them to some extent. Now, if you become an older person, imagine having to bathe with cold water for the rest of your life or sleep on a hard stone floor, sleep outside. Imagine having to give up all of your lifestyle, all the things that have become normal for you. It's a very hard thing for most of us to imagine. And so a lot of us who have seen this collapse coming, you can see our world degenerating on a moral level more than anything else. People becoming weaker and weaker, and the system is on the verge of collapsing. We start to ask ourselves, well, what's the best thing I can possibly do? And one of the answers, one of the prevalent answers that comes to us is that we should start taking as much of this system as we can and store it away for ourselves for future use. This idea of prepping, we're preparing for a time when we are going to need things that are really abundant right now but won't be available at all in the future. And this makes a lot of sense. And by no way or means am I saying that prepping is a bad thing or you shouldn't do it. And it's definitely something that you should do for the interim between this transitionary phase of when the system collapses and then a new world emerges, a new way of being emerges. Prepping is only a stepping stone. It's something that will help you make the difficult transition that all of us are going to face. Because what we're talking about here is a complete different type of cycle that we're going to be a part of. What we're all going to face initially after the collapse is a long period of loss. Everything around us will be saturated with loss. We have been in a period of abundance for a very long time now. I think on a very deep level all of us understand this, that this period of abundance is coming to an end. For many centuries now, our Earth has been in a very stable cycle. The planet Earth is like every other living being. It's like every other planet. It's like the sun. They have cycles. We all have cycles. And for the last so many centuries, the Earth has entered a very calm cycle. It's been a very abundant cycle. And it was very easy for all of us to thrive during this cycle to such an extent that during this modern era of our economy and our mechanized world, we have been able to accrue great amounts of resources. We've been able to just bathe in the amount of abundance that has been available on our calm, stable, fertile planet. If we throw seeds in the ground, they just grow. There's things to harvest everywhere, natural resources, oil, wood, whatever. Whatever we have is just right there. And then we've had all these skills and machines in which to process all of these resources on a very calm and stable planet. This is not always the case, and now this cycle is about to end. And very few people who are on this planet have ever lived through a period of deprivation. We've seen this in the Great Depression in America, and we've seen this in other countries around the world, but very few people, especially the younger generations, have ever known these types of times of deprivation. So we're going from a time of abundance to a time of deprivation. And this period of deprivation is not going to be like the small periods of deprivation that are isolated, like the Great Depression in one country or one culture around the world. This is something that's going to be all around the world for maybe hundreds of years, possibly even thousands of years. So this is where you have a problem with prepping, especially if you're prepping to try to take the world you live in now into the future, because that world is going to disappear and things are just not going to work out the same way on the material level that they've worked out for us for years. Things just aren't going to go well. We're not going to be able to grow food as easily. We're not going to be able to tolerate the climate as easily. The planet is going to be unstable all of the time, and most of us will live in a sense of fear and foreboding for years and years to come. Most of us are starting to get a taste of this. We're starting to feel a little destabilized. And as time goes on and this collapse really kicks into gear and the masses really pick up on it, the masses of people and animal life, and there's this sense that the earth is entering an unstable period, and we all begin to sense that and feel that. What do you think is going to happen when the system collapses and all these people who are helplessly dependent on it? What do you think their condition is going to be? They're going to be terrified. They're going to be angry, they're going to be lost, they're going to be confused, they're going to be disoriented. Many of those people are on medication, and we're all addicted to one thing or another, and the whole condition of the earth is going to change. Imagine these children who have grown up with 7.5 hours on the internet and their cell phones go blank. These kids have been living in an alternative reality for most of their waking hours their whole lives, and all of a sudden that reality gets shut off. And all of the things they're used to, the EMFs and all of the electromagnetic poisoning, but their bodies have adapted to that. And all of a sudden they look outside and they have to actually connect with the natural world and connect with the people around them. It's completely foreign to them. So there's going to be this sense of complete angst, and there's going to be this condition of overwhelming grief all throughout the planet. And we all share a consciousness. We're all connected to each other. And you'll be able to feel this. It'll be in the air. It's like if a family member dies and you enter into that house and there's all these family members, a beloved family member have just passed away, and you can feel the grief. It's a palpable thing at losing this family member, especially if it was a young child or was somebody that was a shock to the family. You can just cut the grief with a knife. It's just so thick. And you're going to see this condition unfold for years and years. You're going to see it. We can see it even right now. We're all in a state of loss. We're losing our civil liberties. We're losing our economic status. we're losing things more and more, and this is just going to continue. You'll just see things disappear from your lives, things that have been there for your whole life. Like hot water, for example, or electricity, or whatever it is. It's just going to be losing one thing after another in your material life. And then after the wars and after the planet has been really damaged by human activity, and there'll be a cleansing system. We're entering a cleansing phase in the earth, whatever they are. Earthquakes and solar flares and the magnetic poles reversing themselves, changing weather patterns. We're hit by a meteor, whatever the things that are going to unfold on top of the damage that people have already done to this planet. And the planet itself is going through a phase where it has almost a cancer on it. And the cancer is our civilization. So the earth is going to react in a way. It has, like, in a sense, antibodies. It has a natural mechanism to get rid of some sort of malignant presence on its surface. So you're going to see all this stuff unfolding. It's already starting to unfold now. And then we're all going to go through a long period of loss and grief because it's the opposite of what we've had for so many years. It's like the hangover that you get when you drink too much or when you overindulge. The cancer you get from indulging in something for too long, smoking cigarettes, eating in an unhealthy way, all the toxins put into your body. So there's going to be a reaction. There's going to be a period of loss and grieving. There's going to be a cleansing period for the earth and for the people that are on it. We're all going to go through a spiritually cleansing period. As much power and control as we've had over the planet Earth and our lives for so many years now, all of that's going to be different. It's going to reverse itself. And so when you're prepping, when you're trying to prepare for the world the way it's going to be, you're going to have to let go of the past. You're going to have to adjust yourself and accept the way the world is going to be in the future. You can't take the past with you. You can't take your American lifestyle with you. I cover this quite extensively in my next book, Egregore. I don't know when it's going to be released, but you can address this kind of a narrative in a much more extensive way in a book. Hopefully that'll be out within the next 6 months or so. My hope in this book is that when people read that, it'll help them prepare them for this period of transition and loss and changing to a new conscious way of being on the planet Earth that is going to resonate with the conditions on the Earth in the future. By having this narrative inside you, by having this story inside you, as the world changes and there is this difficult transition, it will help you make the inner adjustments and prepare yourself for the way the world is going to be in the future. All of us who are intending to survive this difficult period and prepare our children and prepare our grandchildren and help with this work of the preservation of our species, we're all going to have to adjust ourselves and adapt to a new way of living. And some of that's going to be extremely uncomfortable. It's going to be a very gloomy period for a number of years, a difficult period on planet Earth. For those people who have done a good job of prepping and preparing themselves and learning skills, learning survival skills, and making themselves better people, people who are better able to adapt and adjust, those are all great things and worthy things. And I encourage those things, and my family and I are working on those things personally and as a family as well. But all of us are going to have to face the difficult transition of leaving our past world behind us. As soon as the collapse hits and you've done a great job of prepping, you'll immediately become a target of all the other desperate people that haven't prepared. A lot of preppers already know this. But aside from just that, you'll see that all of your stores and all of the things that you have will start wearing out, or you'll start using up what you stored away. And then it will become very apparent to you that this isn't just some short period that you have to ride out until the system comes back up. The system will be gone, and you're going to see that, going to be completely gone. And the earth is going to be so chaotic that you might be forced to leave all of your stuff behind in a moment's notice. And then you're out there without any of the things you've stored, and you're living in a new world. And now there's a couple parts of this about the new world and the way the world is going to be, and what's the most important thing you can do to prepare yourself and make yourself into the kind of person that not only is going to survive, but also thrive in this new world. And the first part of this is you're going to have to find a new purpose. You're going to have to find a new goal of life. You're going to have to find a new reason for being. Because the last so many thousands of years, all life on planet Earth, most life on planet Earth, has been materially driven and profit driven. And I've said earlier that we lived in a time of abundance, so it was very easy to be materially driven, to be sensory driven, and try to accumulate as much wealth and resources that we possibly could. There are many people who aren't materialistic and aren't greedy by nature, but they have some skill, perhaps they're artistic, or they're family oriented, or they had some way of contributing to society on a material level, and they had a goal. They had something that they were working to become. There are, of course, people in our modern day world that are depressed and feel like they have no purpose, but for most of us on the planet, we wake up every day with some material goal, something we want to attain, whether we want to accumulate more resources, or whether we want to create something, or whether we want to do something like climb Mount Everest or something. We all have goals, and they're all based in our material world, and usually they surround some sense of happiness and some sense of pleasure. And that is all going to disappear. It's going to be a different time. It's not going to be a time where we're thriving, just getting through every day, a suffering day. It's going to be difficult for future human beings to breathe, for animal life on planet Earth to breathe. The air quality is going to suffer a huge hit. There's going to be a complete different set of conditions and circumstances on our planet, and every day is going to be miserable and gloomy, at least on the material level. So internally, we're going to have to throw a switch and change the direction of what we think our purpose for our lives are. We're going to have to change our goals. And on a day-to-day basis, we're going to have to find new motivation to wake up every morning and struggle through another dreary day where we're barely able to get by and we're barely able to survive. And there's also another piece to this. When the electrical grid goes down, there's going to be an incredible amount of information lost. Most of what we need to know to survive this next period is going to be lost on the internet. Most of our information is stored on the internet. One of the great things about homesteading, when my family and I homestead, was all the YouTube videos and all the information that was available on the internet to help us learn how to do certain things. And as I said before, there's been a break between the elder generation that knew how to do things with their hands, they knew how to homestead, they knew how to farm. They just had all of this wealth of knowledge that didn't get passed on to the following generations because the following generations were forced off of their farms and into the cities. So there's been this huge amount of information lost about how to live and survive in a time when there is no governmental and corporate support system there bringing food to your front door. But even if we had retained some of this knowledge and some of this knowledge had been passed down to us, of course we would be much better off than we are now. But even with that information, we're going to transition into a new world. The world is going to be different. It's the end of one era and the beginning of another. So there's so many things that we have no way to prepare ourselves for. There's so many things that are going to be basically new for the human species to experience living in this new world. There are no books written, there are no movies made, there are no YouTube videos, there are no people around that can fully prepare us all for what we're going to have to face and what our children and grandchildren are going to have to face as well. So for both of these problems, the problem of finding the motivation, a new motivation to wake up and get up out of bed every day and find a purpose for being, as well as finding the correct information to guide us through this very difficult and tumultuous time. Both of these things can be solved by the most important skill that we can start working on, the most important tool or quality that we can start developing now. This is something that I talk about in one way or another in all of my videos. It's the major theme in all of my books. It's basically my purpose in life to relay this simple message to other people. It's basically the thing I'm most passionate about, the thing I like to talk most about, and that's finding a way to connect to the God within you. So to answer your questions, how does connecting to the God within you help you find a new goal, a new reason for living in a post-apocalyptic world? And how will it connect you to the information you need to succeed and grow and become a successful person in this world? And to many of you Christian listeners or viewers of these videos who might be asking, well, doesn't this go against my belief system? Let me address all three of those questions. To the answer to the first question, the people that are going to survive in a post-apocalyptic world are going to have to get their sustenance from inside themselves, because there's going to be nothing coming their way from their external world. There's going to be no pats on the backs. There's no going to be accomplishments. There's not going to be any ego-boosting activities. I mean, there will be some on some level, but mostly they're going to have to get the love they need, the self-esteem they need, the motivation they need by connecting to the wealth of love that's inside of them. I've experienced this on different occasions in my life as a meditator and someone who's been practicing Raja Yoga now for a number of years. There are times in my life, there's meditations I've had, there's moments I've felt where I've just experienced God's love, experienced the abundance of God's love that is inside of me, that's inside everybody and everything. There's a connectivity there. There's just this universal love and flow. Many people have experienced this in their life. People have experienced an intense feeling of love in their hearts. And when you have these moments, especially when these moments come, quite often they come when you're going through a dark period. You're going through a very difficult time in your life, and then when you need it most, you feel love, you feel God. You can feel connected. You feel connected to the source. You feel connected to your source. And you feel like you can get through anything. And that's what people are going to need in the future. It's going to be a dark and dingy time on our planet materially, but there's going to be an incredible opportunity for us to advance spiritually. Many people are aware of this. People don't think about God when they're enjoying themselves. When their life crumbles around them, all of a sudden they go looking and searching for God. Miseries often bring us to God, bring us back to our source, and that's the true blessing of the next phase, the next period on planet Earth. On a material level, it's going to be dark, gloomy, and dingy, and it's going to be extremely difficult, and there's going to be a lot of loss and suffering. But on a spiritual level, there's going to be an unprecedented opportunity for us all to connect to the God within us. So in terms of the second question, how is connecting to the God within us going to provide us with the information we need to survive and thrive in this dark period on planet Earth? I talk a great deal about demonic presences and negative entities in various videos that I've made. And there is a lot of evidence to support that there is a negative energy, there's a dark energy, there's negative spiritual presence on our planet. There's these demonic entities or whatever you want to call them. But there's also a higher level beneficial or benevolent spiritual presence here as well, what people would call angels. There is a support system that wants all of us to succeed, that wants the human race to succeed. So where you have a dark presence on one side, you also have light beings on the other side. I just made a video about the Illuminati going public and how they are always trying to claim the light. that you have this dark entities that are trying to convince you that they're the ones that are going to show you their way to the light. They want to act as an unnecessary middleman between you and God, thus blocking your passageway to the God that's within you and the beings in your support system that surround all of us and desperately want the human species to evolve and grow and embrace their positive side. Embrace the divinity that resides within all of us. There is a long human tradition. It's a skill, it's a talent that some human people have had in every historical period, in every place and culture around the world. There have been masters and saints and shaman and mystics who have been able to connect to their benevolent spiritual support team, and that support team has guided those people and their followers through difficult periods, guiding them step by step on their way to successfully navigating their difficult time, their difficult journey. And in our very difficult future, instead of a few spiritually talented selected souls that were chosen to connect with the divine support system that supports all of us, in the future all people will be called upon to make this same type of interconnection with our collective divine support system, and that's how all of us will get the information we need to survive and thrive in the post-apocalyptic world. Instead of connecting to the internet, we'll all connect to the Ethernet. All right, lastly, to the third and final question, to my Christian brothers and sisters who wonder if connecting to the God within you is somehow against the Christian tradition and Jesus' teachings. I'm going to make a whole separate video about how, to my understanding, that this is completely in line with Jesus' teachings. In fact, it's something that Jesus wanted all of his followers to do, and that video is going to be entitled, Why the Illuminati Murdered Jesus Christ. That video is going to be the third in this series. The next video in this series is going to be called The Real Goal of Human Life. I hope that all people will stay tuned for these videos. They might go against some of the things that you personally believe, but I think that they're packed with information that all people are going to need to at least think about as we approach this difficult and uncertain period in our collective human experience.